Watching the Daily Report with me, George Maringa. Tonight we still look at matters AUC. My guest still in studio, Maina Miruri, a diplomacy and IR expert and former MCK chair, as well as Gordon Othiambo, an IR expert, and Stephen Degwa, executive director, South-to-South Dialogues, and also an IR expert. On socials, on YouTube, Patrick Lawrence is saying, yes, Madagascar was the Jagadha, the kingmaker. Raila has never been strategic in his campaigns. He assumes a lot. Let's go back to Kenya's reaction, especially on the SADC letter, because that came really barely, if you could call it, a few hours, 48 to 72 hours before the vote. Of what impact did it have? Should Kenya have remained silent? You said diplomacy is silent. Should Kenya have remained silent, or what would have been our reaction?
You know, in other words, they say diplomacy is saying so much good things, or so many good lies, even when you know very well all you are saying are lies, but you say them, you package that lie in a very nice way. I think we would have gotten better wordings around that letter. We would have reworked our wordings around the letter, so that someone, in diplomacy, you do everything not to injure someone's ego. You soothe their ego. But I think that is where we didn't get it so quite correctly. We did not soothe other people's ego. We ought to have done that. So I think that was an overlook, and I keep saying, those are some of the things we need to take into consideration moving forward. But even having said that, I may say strongly that everything we do diplomatically seems to be a knee-jerk reaction in Kenya, out of observation. Remember, when Amina was going to run, it was like an afterthought. So we are fielding in Amina. That was just 2017. We knew who Amina had been and what she had done, blah, blah. Then last minute we think Amina is the best candidate. We failed in Amina. After she lost that seat, what did we do? There was a seat at UNHCR. There was a seat at WTO. Then what did we do? We are going for WTO. Last minute again. Even
still with Amina.
Still with Amina. Yeah. Did we think through it? And we again lost. This time round, we were almost fielding a candidate for Commonwealth. And I think the candidate is a real diplomat. The candidate, being a real diplomat, looked at the situation and withdrew.
Dr. Monica
Juma, being the real diplomat she is, she mirrored the situation, screened so well, and pulled out of it, asked Kenya to pull. So Kenya did that. Raila Odinga's candidature, did we ever know this seat will ever fall vacant? Yes, we knew. What did we do about it 2-3 years ago? Did we prepare Raila's candidacy 2-3 years ago to go for this seat? We did not. When did it come? Raila says he was not asked by anyone to vie. He thought about it by himself. Then the state had to come and help. So if we want some of these seats, we must begin to organize ourselves early enough. We already know what seats will fall vacant when. Did you know that even as we speak, there are 2 seats within AU that have not been filled? Positions of commission. Nobody even forwarded candidates for those seats. So we must be very strategic. We must be very forward-looking in terms of how are we going to deal diplomatically within the continent and globally on some of these positions that we want. If good enough, let us begin to work within the system, organically grow individuals within the system, so that when we are going for this position, they are not seen as outsiders, but they are seen as insiders within those organizations.
Stephen, SADC, when SADC said what it said and instructed its member states, Kenya said, and PS King Korir Singh said, it is barely, an invitation to consider.
Yes.
And be out of courtesy.
Yes.
What do you think should have been the reaction? Because they say, they allude, I don't know, do you think the same, that the last minute reaction by Kenya is what costed us?
Well, I think I tend to think he did not overdo it. his response was actually tempered, you know. I think what we did wrong ourselves is to take it for granted, because you could see that even as the PS was saying, I think he used quite some diplomatic language. He didn't rub people the wrong way, because he had two options: either to keep quiet or to respond to some extent the way he did. And it means that if then he kept quiet, it would have been you have agreed to whatever it is. But I think he tried his best, because he felt the heat. That thing was too hot. I think that's why now he had to respond the way he did. So that for me was not the issue. Even if he responded or not responded, the die was cast, you know. And unfortunately, we do not like to. We are as they say, we are allergic to the truth in this country. So you'll tell people such things, you'll become a pariah, okay? Because I remember during as the elections were ongoing, one of my colleagues who works for an international media house, he was in Addis. So he just sent and said grounded in Mbaya in Addis. He was okay. He was in the middle of it when the elections were starting, but he said grounded in Mbaya, Addis. So personally, I just forwarded that message to people, just to see how people react. So I tried to call him, but we were not able because of the internet issue. And then later on, he wrote something more, yeah? And he said that there's a backlash against the Kenyans' behavior. The political class that went there, let's be honest, they did not give a good show about this country. And so the other countries were like, okay, you guys, you think you're that smart. You see? So it was a David versus Goliath kind of battle, because we were here in Kenya, we were gung-ho, we were showing, we can fight, and we have it together. Then the guy said, okay, let's see how it goes, you see. So that's how we lost. And people who actually would have maybe moved to our side, we rubbed them the wrong way with our attitude,
Yeah.
So the SADC issue, definitely, that one we had no way of, I think it was a coded message. They knew. As you can see, they said Madagascar, they knew what they would do. They knew the Madagascar gentleman would not go anywhere. As Maina says, it was the Jagada thing, mother tongue. Yeah. But so they just said, okay, we just wait. You see, like the way you have these runners in the field.
Yes.
They're going to be number 5 until when the last whistle is blown. That guy now comes and sweeps, everyone ahead of him. So that is the kind of game that was played against us. But I think going forward, another good suggestion is that we need to have the AU consider regional representation, because Francophone, surely they will continue playing this game to their advantage. But even us, still having said that, we can be beaten by Tanzanians or Ugandans. We are not the only Anglophones, because already there are Anglophone organizations that we have not been able to get into as in leadership positions. So we can't assume because it is Anglophone we are going to take it, So we just need to put our act together diplomatically.
Yeah, and we'll be coming to that, the organization of Africa into, rather the regional divide in Africa, and we'll be also listening to what the Prime CS Musalia Mudavadi, Kenya's top diplomat, had to say following that vote. But Mena, let me pick your mind on the razzmatazz that, Stephen has alluded to. And it was sort of a punishment to Taonyesha, and you've spoken about the prefect syndrome, what did you call it? What's the term you used? You said,
Actually, I said it's a prefect big man syndrome.
Yes, big man syndrome. When you look at that and how it hurts Kenya's chances, perhaps even in the future, and perhaps even the imagery that retains, to some of these leaders, because you don't know what else could fall vacant very soon, and some of these leaders, what, we've done even on social media, and the lack of patriotism. What would you call the containing and the restraint that Kenyan leaders should exercise in such scenarios?
I'll say first that we, even as projecting our image goes, we should start nearer home than far. When you go to the shamba, it's been mango season. When I go to Murama and you go to the shamba with a kiondo, yes. Sometimes you don't have to go up the tree. You start with the low-hanging. Yeah. First, we started by missing several low-hanging, and those are costly votes. Number one, it's suspected Ethiopia didn't give us. Ethiopia is Djibouti's bosom friend. Indeed, they use the Djibouti port. Somalia is suspected they did not give us. We have the longest border with any other country. We have the longest border is with Somalia, the maritime and the land. Yes. They didn't give us. You know, Djibouti is basically Somalia. Same language, clans crossover. You know, Djibouti speak Somali.
Yes.
Those are two low-hanging fruits you've already missed. Sudan is injured. It's bad from voting. Sudan, not the South.
Not the South.
South, I think, is a good low-hanging that can never ditch us. Then, while we are losing this, DRC, without the war, should have been our vote. It is sure they didn't give us. Should have been our vote. Other votes lost out of our mistakes are, they may not have known then that an election is coming. The Palestinian-Israeli question. Our president, the whole of Africa, was the only one who said directly, we support Israel. Many other countries support Israel, even America, but America never verbalizes it. They do it with action. In diplomacy, that's what you are saying. In diplomacy, sometimes just keep quiet. Israel knows you support them, but just keep quiet. SADC, South Africa, who is the leader of SADC by clout, has taken Israel to court. It has many grudges with us. Even before coming to Ethiopia, South Africa has many grudges with us. Maghreb, if you don't support the Palestinian issue from Egypt to Tunisia through Morocco, they are not with you. Even though Morocco and Algeria are not friends. Yeah. Then you also lose someone like Algeria very early in this regime. The first person we tried to edge out was Sahrawi. Yeah. You lose Algeria with that. That one is so sensitive, UN had to remind you don't joke with Sahrawi. Small little blunders that later add up, and you keep losing low-hanging fruits. Ethiopia should be using our port through the upset. Lam, we've never finished yet. They can't joke with Djibouti, another low-hanging fruit. As Stephen was saying, and Gordon, you must start preparing early. Know there is an election, start being good early. Be good to Ethiopia. Even this South Sudan here, we help them a lot. We intervene to bring peace to them. But by the way Juba behaves to Kenyans, can tell you guys behave like prefects. They could even vote against you and keep quiet. You never know. Yeah. There is a way to behave when you want to win diplomatic hearts. We don't seem to have done that a lot. Yeah. Look at DRC. Yeah. We call them here for a meeting. They snub. SADC calls 2 days later. They attend. You see? It's sheer disrespect. They can't come here. Why? Because they know you are siding with Rwanda.
Absolutely.
So we have to be careful and intentional.
Let's listen to Kenya's top diplomat, Musalia Mudavadi, the Foreign Cabinet Secretary, what he had to say, that Kenya is not bitter after that vote.
We are not bitter. We are a Kenyan nation, a member of the AU, participating in the process. And Honorable Raila put up a very good fight in this contest. He didn't win, but he has been very democratic and come forward himself to say, let us move on. This chapter is now closed. And we must now look beyond this. I think we should be looking at the gesture of President William Ruto to speak on the floor and recognize the process, congratulate the victor, and concede defeat in a positive manner. That is the principle of democracy that we are trying to institute in Africa.
Is Kenya bitter? Musalia Mudavadi says Kenya is not bitter, but you've seen the reaction of it. In fact, we even have a screenshot of Peter Kaluma's reaction. Let's have that on the screen, Bwana Director, as well as I read it through. Honorable George Peter Kaluma said, I will petition the withdrawal of East African community from the African Union. And then he also said, thank you, President William Ruto, you have done your best. Thank you, Baba Raila Odinga. You ran the best campaign and give it your all. The silver lining is clear. We know our enemies. Yet he says there needs to be a separation of a government statement and Kenyans expressing themselves. Where is this balance? And is Kenya bitter?
I think we need to look at it differently.
Okay.
If we realize that the question of language is becoming a problem, then we ought to have begun working on our language. What language in what sense? A unifying factor which many people now allude to is the French language and the English language that divides Africa in those lines. As East Africa community, one thing I expected maybe to come from the honorable member is that we are going to bring a petition to Parliament to ensure that we call on East African community to have one syllabus on language. One syllabus for Swahili. So beginning with that alone, you are already rallying East Africa together. So if any other country in Africa, which already many countries in Africa are teaching Swahili, including South Africa, Nigeria, and the rest, so whatever syllabus they are going to pick to teach in their universities and schools is going to be East African syllabus. So let us think of how we can get more together than divide ourselves, because what unites us is more important than what divides us, and there are so many things that brings us together. So I think the honorable member ought to have thought of how can we tie in and close East Africa to be more cohesive than not. Another thing that is very fundamental, which all of us must take note of, more so the policy makers. Can we begin to tie our policies to the needs of the country? State interest. Are we tying up? Recently, the foreign policy document was launched. If you read that foreign policy document, I don't see much that is so different from the 2014 one, because at least I took part during its validation. I put in recommendations during its validation, which hopefully I hope will be put in. Can we begin to tie our foreign policies to the state needs and the state vision? Do we have a state vision for the next 100 years, for the next 50 years? So if we begin to have to visualize our country for the next 50, 60, 70 years, then we will be always making policies around the visions that we have for a country. But we cannot make policies that is going to draw us further from the rest of the continent, because if we go by what the honorable member is saying, is simply saying, let us divide ourselves from the rest. Kenya is so important. In fact, Kenya is a gateway to Africa. So you cannot think of even pulling Kenya out of all this. Kenya may not be voted in by other member states within the continent, but Kenya plays a crucial role that nobody can ignore. And I can tell you, before it is late, you will see Kenya taking a leading and very important role in bringing peace in DRC. And if peace is to be brought in DRC, Kenya will not play a second fiddle. It will be in the front line.
Stephen, when you look at the whole, rallying of East Africa and the whole, do you think that even the, comme si comme ça situation with the support from even East Africa itself, because we've seen what DRC has to say, and with the reaction we saw, that virtual snubbing of DRC, and then the appearance at the other summit, at the second meeting. The lack of that synergy within East Africa itself is also hurting Kenya's chances in other issues, because initially, even rather a while back, Kenya used to be considered, the view of Nairobi would be considered in so many things. It would be like, what does Nairobi think? What does Nairobi think? But nowadays, that has seemed to be the opposite.
There's a time that we were non-aligned in word and in practice. So we have moved from that situation. in the Cold War, we had said that we're not aligned, and we tried our best, although the West still came up on top because of the financial needs, you know. We are always broke, so we need to keep getting money from the West, and so we compromise a lot of our ideologies. But I think that's one of the biggest things. Even here, we may not see it that directly, but there was a bit of, the ideological divide between those of us who are leaning to the West, those of us in China and Russia. You see, there's the BRICS thing. So there's a lot of thinking that categorizes now other differences. Not necessarily that those differences might be everything, but they might look at, because I think the people in Madagascar, the people in Djibouti must have gone with, as he says, a strategy. You know, you go sit down, do a study. And it is interesting here because we use politicians for such jobs instead of using technocrats. This was basically a technocrat battle against politics, you know. But as usual in Kenya, we politicize everything. And that's why we always, derail from, our vision. If you look at maybe between Mohamud and Raila, of course, Raila has the acumen, but then now when you go out there into the field and you play more politics than trying to show that you have these strategies that can bring together the continent, then you end up losing quite a bit of credibility. Now, our sense of entitlement definitely is what, as I said again, puts other people off. Because Tanzania, Uganda, they are like, there's a point of departure. Because just like you with your friends, there's a time you're in primary school, high school, then you get to a certain point. This one goes to university, this one goes to a college, this one goes, so your paths divert. So what can make you be together? And that's why people have alumni associations. In order for you to still have those commonalities that made you be friends in high school, in the campus. So if at all we are moving away from what other countries want, even in the region, then if we are not seen to be, impartial, for example, the DRC game, then now people don't want to waste time playing niceties. People want to be like, are you with us or not with us? Because there's no time to waste now. Time is moving. The DRC crisis is growing by the day, okay? And so if at all, people then, the intelligence, just like we have our own NIS, even those other countries have their own intelligence, and they're going to know who is doing business with these guys in DRC. And so when you don't play impartial, then they know you have a lot of stakes in what is happening. So they won't deal with you because they know that you are biased, and the kind of solutions you're going to bring there are not for the benefit of maybe the DRC people. Because right now, it's very ironical that DRC it's not because DRC people love the children and the innocent people of DRC. It's because of the minerals. Let's be honest. All these things from 1960s, I don't know, and all that jazz, yeah? It is simply because there has been a fight for the rare minerals in DRC. And the minute that people can stop the greed of getting those minerals, then you will have now people decide, okay, Kagame can take his school and say, okay, fine, can we negotiate so that everyone has a take, everyone has a stake on the peaceful, whatever, resolution of the crisis. But it cannot be like, even Sudan, I think there's a lot of oil that people fight, okay? In the Middle East, the fights that are going on there, you can see now America has come out now openly and said, and these things I had read them, that they want to make that canal in Gaza, so that they stop depending on Suez Canal because of the geopolitical, the fight with China and so on. So these things, people know them, but we don't want to face the truth. And so people will cover up a crisis, bring in all manner of reasons, but the fact is that it is the money. It is about the resources, because what else are people fighting for DRC?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's listen to what Mudavadi said again on the sidelines, rather after that vote, before we proceed to a short commercial break. Let's listen to that, and then we simmer on it as we head into the break.
Kenya never issued an official statement as the government of Kenya to blame the Anglophone and what have you. Let us distinguish between Kenyans airing their opinion and a government position. The Kenya government has never issued a statement, has it? Because we are not in the business of dividing Africa on the basis of Anglophone and Francophone, or the other one, Russophone, which is the Portuguese direction. We are in the business of talking Africaphone.
We are in the business of talking Africaphone. Let's think about that. Swahiliphone. Let's simmer on that and then talk more after this short commercial break.